I want to share the history of Old Yellow Jacket, Superior, who plucked a few nuggets from the miners' sluice boxes. They booby-trapped him with powder and blew his eyes out. That a man's eyes could be equated with a few colors in a box would have been unthinkable unless he was Indian. Yes, Yellow Jacket, the handiwork of miners, turned to whites as a beggar. He carried his chomuk and accepted whatever was dropped into it. He carried a long staff and walked barefoot so that he could find his way among the thistles strewn in his path by fun-loving white children. But despite this, he rose above his persecutions and affliction to become the haipu, or headman, respected by Indians and whites alike. This is an excerpt from the book Black Son of the Miwok by Jack Burroughs. It shows a glimpse of the pain that my people went through, but it also shows how we rose up beyond the pain and survived. My tribe is here today because of the struggles of my ancestors. My name is Amanda Caesar Walker, and I am an enrolled Miwok member of the United Auburn Indian Community. How many of you know the history of the tribes that were indigenous to the land that you are sitting on at this moment? Well, today I would like to share a short story about how these people, my people, lived before the gold rush, and then the drastic changes and struggles that they faced after contact with the Spaniards, fur traders, and gold miners. For the sake of furs and gold, my people were viewed as less than human beings and were targeted for slavery and elimination. When they couldn't kill us all off, they lied to us and took our land from us. These people had no respect for us nor the land. My ancestors had lived here for thousands of years on this very ground that you are sitting on. Looking back before contact, my people lived in peace and harmony with the land. Food was plentiful, and our population grew. The acorn was considered to be sacred and was an important food source for my people during hard times. There was an estimated 350,000 Indians living in California. Besides my tribe, there was also the Maidu, Nishanan, and over 64 different language groups, with some estimates as high as 80 or more. It was about 1808 when my people first saw an outsider. His name is Gabriel Moraga. He and his men were soldiers and they were bounty hunters. Bounty hunters were hired by the missions to capture away runaway Indians and were paid by the number of heads or scalps they brought back. 40 years later, the newly founded state of California would pay its citizens directly for the Indians they killed. This little-known law was in effect for the first 2 full years of California's statehood. For many years, my people fought to defend their land and resisted encroachment by outsiders. My ancestors were good at keeping the outsiders away, but they couldn't keep out their diseases. In 1833, the Hudson Bay Company tried to kill us off with diseases. They brought in smallpox-infested blankets and released mosquitoes. The diseases killed off 2/3 of our people, especially our young men, so many widows and children were left. Still, our area remained closed to trappers. A very recognized mountain man and trapper named Jebediah Smith came to our land. Our people were tired of the trappers, so they drove him out too. In 1839, John Sutter came into the area. His debts had forced him to leave Switzerland. Our people didn't know quite what to think of him. Sutter knew that certain Indian groups didn't quite get along, and he took advantage of that. Using the same methods employed by the Spanish conquistadors Cortés and Pizarro, Sutter turned enemy tribes against each other. Sutter used remaining tribal members, even children, as slave laborers. He had Indians whipped or killed for running back to their homelands. After the discovery of gold at his sawmill, life changed for Sutter. More importantly, life changed for my people. We were hunted, scattered, and killed for gold and land. It was the worst time in my ancestors' history. 285,000 Indians were killed. In 1850, the California legislature passed a law entitled For the Government and the Protection of Indians. Ironically, the law made Indian people into slaves. Through 1851 and 1852, our ancestors entered into the Barber Treaties. The Indian commissioners assigned to negotiate the treaties were under orders to give at a just and equitable settlement with the Indian people. Between March 19, 1851 and January 7, 1852, the commissioners drew up a total of 18 treaties and one supplemental agreement. My people were asked to give up large amounts of land. My ancestors made a smart decision and thought about the future of our people. They knew that life had changed for our people, so they asked for large reservation and protection from hostile settlers. The tribes reserved over 8.5 million acres of land. Furthermore, the government recognized tribes as sovereign nations. They had the right to govern the people and their own land. Believing that everything was settled, the tribes resumed daily life as best they could. The treaties were sent to Washington, D.C., but they were never ratified or approved. In fact, the treaties were locked away for over 50 years, during which time the land our people chose was sold as public land by the very government with whom they'd entered into the agreement. The promises made in the treaty never materialized for the Indian people. At this point, our people existed wherever they could, especially close to our familiar homelands. Our people then were rounded up and put on small rancherias in 1870. My ancestors were put on the Auburn Rancheria. They managed to live through the hardships of the Reorganization Act of 1934, which changed the traditional ways of governing themselves and created chaos within the tribe. We didn't accept the act, and our ancestors didn't agree with it because our people had already suffered enough. In 1953, another terrible government act came along, called the Termination Act. As a result of the act, we were one of 41 California rancherias terminated. This law said that my ancestors were not Indians and did not have rights. It didn't terminate my ancestors until 1967. By that time, my ancestors were a mixed tribe of Miwok and Maidu. The historical distribution plan, juxtaposed with the Termination Act, paid the Indian people that were terminated. The money that was paid was the distribution, and was a way of concealing the unjust nature of the termination. Those terminated were the historic band of Auburn Indians, but the dependent members who were the descendants were not terminated. They were the ones that were able to keep their status as Indians in the government's eyes. Some of them stayed near or on the Auburn Rancheria. In 1991, we were able to reestablish ourselves as the United Auburn Indian Community and adopt a constitution to govern ourselves. We were ready to right the wrongs of termination. In 1994, Congress passed the H.R. 4248, officially gained us federal recognition. Today, we as a tribe are rebuilding our culture and planning for the future of our people. Not only do we still exist, but we are succeeding, despite the historic attempts to extinguish our culture and annihilate our people. It was because of the strength of our ancestors that faced genocide, poverty, and assimilation that my people can be here today.